Thank you. I want you to think about the typical American work week. You got 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. That's what we have decided as a society to be the best way to maximize our resources. Now imagine if one day a week, you and the rest of your coworkers were replaced by people who were not properly trained or educated and had no previous experience in your field. What would happen? What would happen to your business? Well, your profits would go down, productivity would decrease, and you'd be at risk of losing your business. You might ask yourself, who would allow this to happen? Who would allow 20% of its resources to not be fully utilized? That's precisely what's happening right now in our country with our disabled population. It's because 1 in 5 Americans today live with a disability, making up the largest minority group in the whole country. But they're not receiving the same opportunities and acceptance that everyone else does. The proof is in the pudding. If you're a high school disabled student, you're twice as likely not to graduate. If you're lucky enough to go on to college, you are half as likely to graduate from college. People who are disabled are 4 times more likely to not have a job. And what this boils down to is society's view on disabled people. And really, there's a stigma around disability. And it boils down to the general public being uncomfortable around people with disabilities. You see this every day when the wheelchair user is going down the street and people are blatantly staring at them. Or people talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old because I have a cane in my hand. These are common everyday occurrences for people with disabilities. You wouldn't treat anybody else that way. But again, these are common occurrences. Like many people with a disability, finding acceptance for me growing up was nearly impossible. I was born with a rare retinal disease called Stargardt's, and I've been legally blind since birth. Being a blind kid in a visual world is tough enough, but things were made even worse when I started going to school. From the second I walked onto the school campus at 5 years old, I was bullied, teased, and tormented because of my disability. I can remember my first bully. His name was Evan, and he was in kindergarten. We were in kindergarten together. And one day, Evan came up from behind me, and he yelled out the name that my classmate had so affectionately given me, which was Blind Kid. He came up from behind me and yelled, "Hey, Blind Kid." And as I turned around, he socked me square in the face. Now, this wasn't because of something I had done to Evan. I hadn't taken his lunch or stolen his favorite toy. He did it simply because I was different, because of something I had no control over. When you're a kid growing up, you're figuring out who you are, your personality, you're growing your self-confidence. But instead, I was being told I was worthless, subhuman, and deserved to be disabled. And when you hear that day after day after day, you start to believe it. You really do. Most days after school, I would come home crying because of what had happened at school and anticipating the torment coming the next day. It got to the point when I was 9 years old, I was in 4th grade, and I wanted to kill myself. I'll never forget the conversation I had at the dinner table with my parents one night after a particularly rough day of bullying, and I told them I wanted to kill myself. Now that's something that no parent should ever have to hear, let alone from a 9-year-old. That's truly how I felt at the time, and that's how I felt for most of my childhood. I was going down a really deep and dark path with no end in sight, really. When I got to high school, I was really nervous. I was going to a new school, I had very little friends, and I was afraid the bullies would latch on to me again. So I decided to join a sports team to make some more friends and kind of insert myself in the social scene. So I decided to join the track and field team and throw the shot put and discus. I can recall going to the head track coach and be like, "Hey, I'm a blind person and I want to throw a shot put and discus." A blind person out there with shots and discs flying around. What could go wrong, right? But after talking a couple of times, I was able to convince him to let me join the team. Now, my freshman year in high school in track, I stunk up the room. I was the worst thrower on the team by far. But that year, I met a person who really altered the course of my life. He was a volunteer by the name of Coach Corbett. He was our throwing coach. And Coach Corbett gave me something that up until that point in my life I never have had. He gave me a chance, he believed in me, and he treated me like everybody else on the team. He saw past my disability, the thing that society has deemed an irreversible barrier. So he applauded me when I did well, but he got on my case when I deserved it too. My sophomore year, I started slowly improving, and I was middle of the pack. All of a sudden, all the coaching and tips from Coach Corbett just clicked, and I went from middle of the pack to top of the conference. At the end of that year, I had taken second place in the conference in the shot put. Coach Corbett's belief in me helped me realize all the things I could do. As a disabled person, like I mentioned before, as a kid, you're told all these things you can't do, and that's the things you focus on. A person like Coach Corbett helped me focus on my abilities. So sure, there's some limitations to my eyesight. I can't drive, I can't recognize people. The Army's not recruiting me anytime soon to be a sniper, although the NFL has asked me to be a referee several times. But that mindset, that attitude that Coach Corbett, a volunteer, helped me change, it just altered the course of my entire life. When I started getting good in track and field, I knew I had found my passion, the thing I was good at, the thing that I was going to use to propel my life forward. Shortly thereafter, I started competing internationally for the blind in track and field, and I've gone on to win 3 world titles, and I hold the American record in the discus. Currently, I train in judo at the Olympic Training Center in town, and got the best coaches and facilities in the entire country. And I've been able to travel the world and experience things I never thought were possible as a kid because of one person's selfless act to look beyond my disability. What volunteers like Coach Corbett do are vitally important to shaping people, or young people, with disabilities. But it's also a huge impact on adults who experience disability later in life. I've witnessed that through my work. I work for a nationwide nonprofit that provides sports and physical activity opportunities for the blind and visually impaired. One of our annual events is in Vermont. We do a ski event there, and we usually have about 30 blind skiers and 100 ski volunteers that make sure all of our athletes are guided down the hill safely. One of the athletes this past year was a former Marine. He was overseas in Afghanistan in 2010, and an IED explosion took out his battalion. While he survived, the explosion left him totally blind in both eyes. I had talked to this gentleman before the event. He had told me that after his explosion, he never thought he'd be able to ski again. It was one of the favorite activities him and his wife used to do together before the explosion. So let's fast forward to the event. It's day 1. He's out there with his guides. First day, easing back into it on the bunny slopes. Imagine going down a ski hill with no vision. You might take it slow too. Day 2 though, he was out there zipping down huge black diamond mountains with a smile as big as the mountain. Day 3, volunteers taught his wife how to guide him so they could ski together in the future, just like they did before his accident. So again, it goes back to all the barriers that are put on people with disabilities, the things we can't do. So sure, it's reasonable to think that if you're totally blind, you're not going to be able to ski. But imagine having that thought process, and then imagine conquering a mountain with no sight. There's nothing you can't do. What I witnessed that trip was a man regaining his confidence, regaining his competitiveness, and regaining the love for the things he did before his explosion. That was all made possible because of volunteers giving up a small amount of their time. And I truly believe that every single one of us humans has an innate urge to help others and leave a lasting impact on this world. Some of us can find that through our professions, whether it's being a doctor or a nurse or a teacher, but others are still looking for that way that they too can impact people. I challenge you all to take a page out of Coach Corbett's book and enable the disabled. Enable them by volunteering for local nonprofits that serve the disabled and support their programs through donations. Finding these groups is as easy as doing a quick Google search for local nonprofits in your area. I guarantee you have some, and I guarantee there's an outlet for you no matter what your passion is, whether it's education, arts, or sports, or what have you. And you might be fearful of being around disabled people, like we talked about, that discomfort. But I encourage you to get over that fear. The same way that disabled people challenge their fears every day by living in a society that doesn't accept them. Think back to that person that had a profound impact on your life, shaping who you are. Maybe it was a teacher or a coach or a mentor. You now have that same opportunity to impact somebody's life. By supporting these groups that serve the disabled, you are impacting the largest minority group in the entire country through peer support, acceptance, providing opportunities they wouldn't otherwise receive. I would love to stand up here and tell you that disabled people are all doing great and we don't need your help. But that's just not the truth. While there are many cases of disabled people achieving success, there is a large group of disabled people who are not even scratching the surface of their potential. This again goes back to the stigma in society. Being a disabled person right now in our society is like being a shunned worker in a hostile work environment. How can we expect you to be productive if nobody wants to work with you, your coworkers are uncomfortable around you, and you're not receiving the same opportunities as everybody else? It's nearly impossible. That's why it's up to all of us to change that hostile environment into a warm, welcoming environment where people are embraced for their skills and given opportunities not because we have to, but because we want to. You'll be enabling a group of people who desperately want to be contributing members of society, but have been told time and time again they can't. Be the person that shows them they can. Be the person that helps them realize their potentials and helps them achieve their goals. I was able to achieve one of my goals about a year ago. I was in Seoul, Korea for the World Championships for the Blind. And I had just won my second world title in the discus that day, and I had broken the American record too. I was standing on top of the medal podium, the gold medal around my neck, American national anthem booming throughout this 50,000 seat stadium. And I started thinking back to how far I had come to get to that point. From the kid who cried himself to sleep every night, to the 9-year-old who wanted to kill himself. Then I thought about all the people that came into my life who believed in me. They gave me a chance, they gave me their time, and they gave me a new lease on life. For a long time, this right here is what defined me. I was the blind kid. But because of those people coming in and seeing past my disability, this right here, that no longer defines me. Because of those people going the extra mile and making sure I reach my potential, this right here is what defines me. I wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for all those things. I wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for all those people who helped redefine who I am. You all have that power too, and I recommend you use it. Thank you.